Recording live in the Lucky Number 7 Lounge, this is Dine, Drink Vegas, the podcast by and for everybody stuck at home, wishing they were in the land of neon lights and bad decisions. And you've stumbled across episode 79, where we bring you the drink of the day and Vegas news. And Bill's back and is going to give us a trip report at the end of the episode on his recent adventures and misadventures in Ireland. Of course, I'm your host, John, also known as the Baller on a Budget. And before we could get into all of this great content, it is time to say hello to the man you all missed when you heard the brief and awkward episode 78. Of course, I mean the high roller formerly of the High Plains, the leader in the luxury lounge, the king of comps, the Alabama slammer. I mean Bill. Welcome back to American soil, Bill.
How are you, John?
Well, I need a drink. That's how I am. It's been a day. It has been a very, very, very long day of work, and I need booze.
If only you had a podcast or some other vehicle where you had regular access to drinks.
You're right. Now, listeners, if you happen to follow us on Twitter, you would know that before we started recording, I went ahead and posted up a picture of the drink of the day. Now, I actually posted a picture of two drinks of the day because as we record, it is St. Patrick's Day and Bill just got back from Ireland. So like a good American on St. Patrick's Day who wants to pretend he's Irish, even though there's not a drop of Irish blood in me, I am double fisting. One of my drinks is, of course, Guinness, the finest beer on all of God's green earth. But the other is actually our drink of the day, which is Teeling whiskey, and this happens to be the Spirit of Dublin single malt, non-chill filtered, 86 proof Irish whiskey. Bill, have you had a sniff and a taste yet? Or are you ready to dive into this delicious whiskey?
So first, I want to say thanks to my older son, Edwin, who bought me the bottle that I am about to enjoy. He bought it as a birthday gift, which is near here. So thank you very much, son. So I just now cracked open his bottle. I've had it before, but Teeling occupies a special place in my heart because Edward and I took a tour of the Teeling distillery. I was about to say distributory, but that just means I need more drinks. The Teeling distillery in Dublin, a little bit over a year ago. So I've just cracked it open and
see what we get on the nose.
Yeah, I've got the tasting notes pulled up, but I'm trying very hard to describe it without reference to the tasting notes.
So I would say, heather and honeysuckle, a little bit of vanilla, some malt, some cereal, nutty goodness. Nothing really strong. It's a much gentler aroma than a bourbon.
And I enjoy the gentler aroma. I will say I surprised the fire out of a person in the liquor store in Dublin on Friday when I explained that I knew the difference between an Irish whiskey and an American bourbon and the fact that bourbons age more quickly because they're in a hotter climate and in first use barrels. And he wasn't used to having somebody who had any idea what he was talking about.
That must be refreshing. I think a lot of people assume when they run into an American abroad that we may not always be the smartest of people, which is not always fair. It's a country of 330 million. Occasionally the dum-dums make it beyond our borders and give us a bad rap. Bill, do you get any citrus on the nose here? Because I'm getting that in the background now.
So on the front, I don't. I do on the back of the tongue, but I only did that after you mentioned it. You were talking about something about cereals, and that absolutely makes sense to me as I drink this. I'm looking now at the tasting notes because I actually intended to ask you a couple of questions. So I'm on Teeling's website, right? These are Teeling's words about this whiskey, and they describe the finish as luxurious and long with passion fruit and pineapple. This tastes like nothing like either of those things. What are they talking about, John?
Well, there's a couple of things to keep in mind anytime we get into tasting notes. And first and foremost, everybody's palate is different. And even if the person next to you swears they smell or taste a certain thing, you may not pick it up. And that's just because of the way we're wired. The other thing is that whiskey companies hire marketers, and sometimes the marketers and the tasters really look for the biggest, flashiest, most compelling sounded verbiage to describe what they taste and smell. And maybe if I think real hard, I could get this in my head to evoke passion fruit. But honestly, Bill, I'm getting whiskey frosted flakes and a slight hint of orange in a very pleasant way. So I like this. But yeah, I'm with you. The pineapple, no, there's a little acidity, and I think I'm reading it as citrus. I could see where somebody might read that as pineapple, but I don't get the passion fruit.
No, that actually, I'm glad you said that, because sometimes I wonder about the whiskey words people use to describe stuff. And I will say that off of their tasting notes, they describe the nose as tropical fruits, caramelized sugar, oak spice, and ginger. All of those things make sense to me. Like, I can see how all of that is in here. Particularly the caramelized sugar makes sense to me. The oak spice makes sense to me. Describing this as passion fruit and pineapple is I've decided to try very hard to quit cursing on this show. It is incompletely sensical to me.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. And even on the spicy notes, it's relative to your palate. I'm a West Texan who eats spicy food all the time, and who, I go through like 7 bottles of Angostura a year in my home bar. My threshold for when I register, whether it's baking spices or hot and spicy spices, my threshold where something reads as spicy to me is a much higher bar. I did say I could pick up a little hint of barrel in it. I wouldn't call it spicy, but again, when you drink as much Angostura-based drinks as I do, like rye whiskey tastes spicy. High rye bourbons taste spicy. There's not an Irish whiskey on the planet that tastes spicy. But on the other hand, if you've been drinking Teeling's Base Spirit or Jameson or Bushmills, this particular one might read as very intensely flavorful if your counterpoint is very simple, lower end 80 proofers.
So you were talking about Angostura drinks, and you're about to be immensely proud of my 20-year-old Edwin, who you know and love. You and he are good friends with one another. But what he had as his nightcap tonight was a rum old fashioned. He found one of the 2 places in Dublin that will sell him Angostura bitters, and he poured some into his rum with a little simple syrup. So it's like you have influenced him, John.
I feel like I have touched the next generation, and I am proud. And he's a good kid. Both of your sons are amazing young men. Well, Bill, anything else you want to say about this particular whiskey, or should we dive into the news?
One last thing. So I poured a second drink because I've learned I need 2 drinks to hear my own voice through this whole podcast. So the second drink is the Green Spot, and you know what? It is a little bit sweeter. Green Spot is a lot closer to an American bourbon. And to be clear, when I say sweet, I'm not talking anything like Woo Girl college drinks, right? I think I just like what I like. And I like American bourbons and the whiskeys that are closest to it. The Teeling is delightful. I am glad I have it, and I am absolutely going to finish it. I just prefer things with more of the sweetness out of a bourbon barrel. That's what I like.
This is helping me refine things down, because I would say that the Teeling in a single malt offering like this reads like a scotch. There are lots of scotches I would compare this to. So the fact that you prefer Irish whiskeys that are a little more barrel forward, sweetness forward, than something like this that is malt forward, sort of jives with the fact that even the scotches that aren't peaty and smoky and medicinal, they're still not your jam. So the fact that you didn't rave over this and
no, I like it. I like it very much. I like it much better than anything else you've described as Scotch heavy. I just I prefer the other one that's more bourbon forward.
Right. And you're giving me a read on what it is that makes you happy about a whiskey and why most scotches don't scratch that itch for you.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on and talk about the news.
Scott of Idle Vegas reported that Resorts World is closing their poker room at the end of the month, leaving only 8 poker rooms left operating on the Las Vegas Strip. Bill, you and I have never played poker in a poker room. If you were going to engage in such an activity, would you want to be on the strip or would you rather find an off-strip, possibly lower stakes game?
So to be clear, I would never play poker in Vegas because I can't control my facial reactions to things. Like I know what cards are out there, but you will also know what cards I have. That makes poker a bad bet. I will say that if you were to force me to do it, I would 100% go downtown where it's going to be a little bit lower stakes. And my odds of running into at least 1 or 2 other players who are as bad as I am would be higher. How about you, John? Do you have any interest in joining a poker game in Vegas?
At some point in my life, I will do it because I love poker. I've been playing poker. Like my grandfather taught me poker when I was 3. I'm not even kidding. My problem with the concept of live poker, especially in Vegas, is I'm likely to run into one of 2 tables. I'm going to run into the table where there's a couple of pros or really experienced amateurs who not only know everything I know about, I know my numbers. I know what to hold. I know when to draw. I know when to bet. I got all that down. I understand the odds of the game. But the psychology at the table, do I have tells? Will I have tells after my 4th or 5th drink because we've met? I'm afraid I would get run out of the room at a table with people who aren't playing the cards, who are playing the players, because I just don't have that kind of experience. But then when you get into a really low-end table, I don't want to be at the table with some jerk who only knows poker because they watch the World Series of Poker on TV and they think the way to win is go all in on every single freaking hand. So what I play in Vegas is video poker, because it's just playing the cards in front of me. And I enjoy that, and that's what I'm going to stick with. But sure, once in my life, I'll jump into a live table.
I think that is totally fair. Well, in other news, Scott also shared that American, the beer bar that called the Link Promenade home for years, will reopen at Treasure Island on March 21st. And I am super excited about that because, John, much like you've been trying to get me to go to the Rio, I've been trying to get you to go to TI. But this raises 2 questions. First, will they still have karaoke? And second, John, are you still banned after your performance of Poison's Talk Dirty to Me or not because they've moved locations?
I really don't know the answer to that. I will say there was a crowd of people applauding me on the Link Promenade for my over-the-top karaoke performance, but they really do frown on you taking the wireless mic and the props beyond the boundary of the bar and jumping on the lip of that little fountain there at the promenade. I have been back in the American at Link and had a drink, but the karaoke guy gave me the wagging no finger, so I didn't attempt to sing. That was at 1 year after the incident. We're not far enough down the road. I want to say that was 2017, 2018. We're almost a decade later. I think I'll give it a shot. We'll see what happens.
So I didn't know you had gotten the wagging no finger a year later, and I am now even prouder to know you, John.
Oh, he looked at me and he immediately locked eyes and he gave me the Dikembe Mutombo. Like,
that's awesome.
I did not even attempt to sign up. And by the way, listeners, if you ever run into me in Vegas at a karaoke bar, you need to know 2 things about me. I cannot sing, but I'm going to sing. I am that guy, and I don't even care.
Totally fair.
All right. Oh, it's my turn.
Yes.
All right. And just hours before we started recording, Scott broke the news that will break the hearts of some budget-minded Vegas visitors. Tony Roma's, the place for ribs, or so their signage says, the location at the Fremont Hotel will close its doors on May 9th. Now, for those of you that don't spend enough time downtown, This is the steakhouse that is known for some ridiculously low price specials on lobster and prime ribs. And when you walk by during the opening of their dinner service, there will be long lines of people because I don't think they take reservations, or at least not very many. And it's kind of first come, first serve. And it has been a fixture down there for decades. Now, Scott did not have word yet on what is going to go into that space, but he does know that Fremont plans to have another dining concept in there by September. Bill, I think I know the answer to this, but is there ever a moment when the high roller, formerly of the High Plains, ever looked at the line of the Tony Romas and thought, yep, I'm going to go stand with them?
John, forgive me for I have sinned. And in the year 2004, when I lived in Mexico City, Rachel and I went to the Tony Romas in Mexico City because somehow that seemed like a good idea. Like in a city of 25 million people with every cuisine in the world, we went to Tony Romas. And what I learned from that trip to Tony Romas 22 years ago is, why is that a choice I would make when I'm in a city with better options? So no, by the time my Vegas career started, it never even tempted me a little bit because there are so many better choices. It's not that Tony Roma's is wrong. It's that there are always better choices. And if I've got 10 days in Vegas a year, why would I waste one of those meals there?
Yeah, I have to say, because I weighed this through on the Baller on a Budget matrix. It is budget. And I've eaten at a Tony Roma's before. Lori and I ate at one in Dallas when we were newlyweds, I don't know, 25 years ago. The food was perfectly fine, right? If you, I can eat at a low-end chain steakhouse. I don't mind Outback. I don't. Texas Roadhouse, sure thing. Tony Roma's, okay. But when I'm in Vegas, it's not budget. It's not dude on a budget. It's baller on a budget. There is nothing baller about standing in a line 50 deep to get into Tony Roma's on Fremont. You know what? I could spend a little bit more money and get prime rib and lobster at a half dozen good steakhouses in Vegas. And most of them, now Barry's is pretty expensive, but most of them won't break the bank. It'll be more expensive than Tony Roma's, but my time is worth something. And somebody else can help me out with that. And if you really got to save money, go down to, at least while it's open, go down to Seagulls, not Seagulls, Seagulls down at the El Cortez. They got the same thing at close to the same price, and you won't have to stand outside in line like a schmuck. No offense to people who stand in the line.
No, I am 100% with you. And you know, John, that if I had even a hint of an opening, I would take it to make fun of you. But here, you're just correct. So in other news, according to ESPN and multiple other sources, and basically most of the internet, the NBA owners are going to vote next week on expanding to Las Vegas and Seattle in time for the 2028-2029 season. And to me, John, this speaks to a couple of things. One, when we've talked about it before, but Las Vegas is a real place where real people actually live. And, you know, there's a community that wants sports teams. Two, so John, you can go to Las Vegas and you can only see the A's, the basketball franchise, or the football team. What game do you go watch?
Well, you
or
left
the hockey
out,
team.
Yeah, I
the
was about
hockey
to say,
team.
you left out the Golden Knights, which I have not seen yet. I've wanted to, it just hasn't worked out. I think my order of interest, and again, thinking about this from the Baller on a Budget point of view and how expensive the NFL is. And fortunately, these are seasonal games, so it's not like there's very few times when you will be able to pick from all four. Most of the year, 2, maybe 3 of the 4 are an option. But in this order, the A's, the Knights, whatever the NBA franchise is, Las Vegas locally suggested the Scorpions. I like that. Or the Raiders. In that order, football is last simply because of how expensive a trip to any NFL football game is. Baseball is first because there's just not much better than a day of day drinking and watching baseball, especially if I have, I don't know, 8 or 9 gambling slips in my shirt pocket to help get me tied into the game. But I do think that for me, hockey would trump the NBA. What about you, Bill?
So I'm a baseball guy. I coach youth baseball every year as like part of my community service, even though my kids have long since aged out of it. I enjoy the game live, and like as you point out, it's just cheaper, so I would do that. After that, I don't know if it would be football or hockey, but both of those are interesting to me. I guess probably the least interesting of those to me would be the NBA franchise, mostly because every time I watch a basketball game, I don't understand what causes a foul to be called. But if you can score 50 or 60 times a game, then defense isn't a thing. I enjoy games where defense is an option, and that looks to me like something that doesn't happen in the NBA.
Well, based on a number of scandals that have gone down with NBA refs, I think a foul occurs when the ref has a bet on the game and needs a certain outcome.
Um, Totally fair. And yet, yeah, no. So baseball would absolutely be my thing. And at some point, because I'm the leader in the luxury lounge, we are gonna get a suite at an A's game.
Okay. Yeah, I'm in. I don't know how I'm going to pay for my share. I guess I don't need 2 kidneys anyway. It'll be fine. Even though I got the diabetes, I probably do need both of them. But whatever. That's future me's problem.
Yeah.
Las Vegas locally, speaking of Las Vegas is a real city where real people live, and it's not all about tourism. Las Vegas locally shared that Henderson residents are rallying to save a local family's domesticated camel herd after the city's animal control division ruled that the animals are illegal under current city codes, putting a 27-year petting zoo business on the line. Bill, I'm going to stay out of the local politics for a minute, but now that we know that at least if you're in Vegas for the next week or two while this goes through the courts, a petting zoo with camels is a thing you could do in Vegas. Any interest?
So there are a few things that I will never enter into my personal search history on any computer, and that I sure as fire will never enter into my search history at work. But one of those terms, which I will never Google, is Vegas petting zoo, because there's just no way that comes out with any sort of healthy results.
Yeah, there's a place downtown called the Green Door that I understand may be able to help you with that.
How would you understand that, John? Well, what do you need to share with our listeners?
It is the running butt of jokes on several Reddit subs and Facebook groups I'm a part of.
I feel like you should tell us more, although you may want to go talk to Lori before this episode airs.
It is a nightclub that I would never venture into, but is popular with the crowd who likes to turn the pineapples upside down on their porch.
You know what? God bless. And no, I have never been to this petting zoo in that particular city. But in more productive news, multiple sources have shared photos of signs for the Cromwell coming down after 2 o'clock on March 16th, which was yesterday, as the property is rebranding to the Vanderpump. And I will say that I enjoyed it when it was the Cromwell. I enjoyed it when it was Wild Bill's before that. I don't know that I've got any interest in going to the Vanderpump. John, do you?
I think the Vanderpump, Lisa Vanderpump's properties, her bars and restaurants definitely seem to cater to a more feminine vibe. It is a place I would absolutely want to stay if my wife were to say to me, "Hey, sweetie, I want to check out the Vanderpump." Beyond that, it is not a place for me, but it turns out whatever makes my wife happy is a thing I'll go do.
That is a totally fair judgment. I'm just saying, I don't think this is probably the location of our next guys trip.
Speaking of things that we won't do on the next guys trip, and that might pop up if you search for the petting zoo in Vegas, a At Real Vegas Locals on X shared details of a furry convention, the Las Vegas Fur Con, that's coming to the off-strip Alexis Park Casino April 2nd through the 5th. It is a 21 and up only event. Bill, are you familiar with what furries are? And how many blocks away from this event do you prefer to stay?
I am familiar with what they are, and I prefer to say approximately all of the blocks away. I will say that on Sunday of last week, so Sunday 9 days ago, I was in the Dublin train station with my entire family, my wife, my sister, both of my children, when Comic-Con rolled through the Dublin train station. And I understand that Comic-Con isn't the same thing as a furry convention, but still seeing the rather restrained Irish approach to Comic-Con was like, bless all their hearts. That is not the experience I was expecting to have on this particular train to Galway. And you know what? That may not be the weekend I choose to go to Vegas.
I wouldn't avoid the whole town because of a furry con and an off-strip casino. And I will say this, I like going to Comic-Cons. And when you go to Comic-Cons, especially in smaller markets like we have out here in far west Texas, all the fan bases show up. The Comic-Cons stop being merely Comic-Cons, but the comic fans are there, the sci-fi fans are there, the anime fans are there, and yes, you better believe the furries are there. And yes, we have furries in far west Texas. And in my experience, while furryism is not my jam, the furries I've run into at Comic-Con seem like perfectly nice people. That's just their thing. And what better place than Vegas to do whatever the thing is that you like to do? I don't want to be in the building, mind you, because it's not my thing. But bless the fur con people. I will say, Lori and I were at the Plaza for the horror movie convention. Those people were delightfully weird.
So that actually is one of the things that I love about Vegas. Is it's the only place in America I can think of where it truly is okay to be whoever you are. Because if you're there dressed up as a furry, you know what? God bless, your money spends. But it's also okay to be me. It's also okay to be dressed up. And in my case, not dressed up. This is just me putting on clothes. But it's okay to be dressed up as a Episcopalian who looks like he just rolled out of the country club because he did, right? Like that is also okay.
Yes.
Whoever you happen to be is just fine. And God bless Vegas for being that experience.
Amen. So to any furries that might listen to our podcast, I hope you enjoy the convention. Have a good time.
Yeah. So in other news, Vegas Publicity reports that the Smith Center's 2026-2027 Broadway season includes Phantom, Maybe Happy Ending, and Beauty and the Beast plus Elf. So there are a couple things about this, John. First, I've learned tonight in talking to you that the Smith Center is a place which exists. It is apparently where they do operas in Las Vegas. And second, what's your use case here? Like, when do you as a tourist go to see one of these shows?
So I will say that because Vegas is a large metropolitan community with a big entertainment base, the version of whatever touring company for a Broadway play or musical or opera that will be in Vegas will be a better version with better talent than the touring company that comes through West Texas. I have gone to Fort Worth to the Bass Hall to see Bass Hall. Sometimes that Texas really does come out. I've been to Bass Hall to see Hamilton. So going to a major metro to catch one of these touring shows can be great. The Hamilton performance was great. I probably would not schedule a trip to Vegas around something at the Smith Center, but I have been known to check their calendar. Now, when I travel with my wife, we usually travel on weekdays because we're on a budget. And your local music halls and opera houses don't tend to have shows on weeknights because, locals want to go to a show on the weekend when they're off. So it hasn't happened yet. But if I'm going to be in Vegas on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, I will always check their calendar. And I'm sure sooner or later there will be some tickets that catch my eye.
Fair. Well, John, what's going on at the Rio with their restaurants?
All right, Bill, and I put this story on here because my wife and I have a trip planned for June. We're planning to stay at the Aria, although I'm always surfing offers. And I had booked as our steak night to go to Cleaver. Now, Bill, you and I have never been to Cleaver, but it is the sister property to Herbs and Rye. You and I can both agree Herbs and Rye is phenomenal baller on a budget, right?
100%.
And Cleaver's very similar, and that's what we have booked. But I popped onto the Rio's website and clicked on James Tree's High Stakes. They don't have a happy hour because I love me a happy hour, but they have introduced a pre-theater dinner menu that's available from 4:30 to 6 o'clock. It is a 3-course dinner, but I'm going to put an asterisk by that. It's 3 courses, but your main course comes with a side dish that you could share with others. So you get a first course, an appetizer or a salad. You get a second course, which is their flat iron steak, prime rib. There's the venison black backstrap, surf and turf. Then you can pick a side, and then they have 2 dessert options. $85 for a prefix dinner menu from a James Tree restaurant. Bill, I got to think this might be something where both the high roller and the baller on a budget both look at this menu and think, I can get down with this.
So, yeah, it's not even close. 100%, I would be delighted to be there. And I've actually, because this is a thing I do, been looking at this menu, and I think I start with the wedge salad because I need some kind of vegetables at some point, and vegetables covered in blue cheese and bacon seems like the way to go. Although the pastrami glazed bacon also sounds good, and the prime rib sliders sound good. So for the main course, I'm torn, and I probably go for the flat iron steak, but I'd ask what exactly is included in the surf and turf. The side is the crab and asparagus gratin.
Or any other side on their menu. You got to read the fine print.
So I'm old and I can't. And for a dessert, sure, let's assume I'm alive at that point, and whatever you bring me is just fine. What do you go for on this meal, John?
So I'm a little bit different than you. I'm hitting the pastrami glazed bacon as my appetizer. I'm hitting the venison backstrap because I do enjoy venison, but at over 50 years old, I don't want to go sit in a deer blind at dark 30 in the morning, and I don't want to clean animal guts anymore. I am a redneck, but I'm an old, tired redneck. No, thank you. I think for my side, I'm getting the Brussels sprouts, and then I am doing the dessert because the Black Forest pie cake-in, it's a play on turducken. It is a cherry pie inside a slice of chocolate cake. I don't know how you do that, but I got to see it.
Like justice and truth demand that you see it, John.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well,
all right.
Speaking of joints owned by Chef James Tree, USA Today included Esther's Kitchen in their list of the best 39 restaurants in America. And John, based on your experience, we both agree. So first question, is it fair to say we both agree that Esther's Kitchen is phenomenal?
Yes, I've been twice, both experiences out of this world.
Is it fair to say that it's one of the 39 best restaurants in the U.S.?
I think so now, and I'm going to make the argument this way. I would hardly consider myself a globetrotter, but I've lived in several states, eaten in a lot of places. Esther's Kitchen is the best Italian food I've ever had. It just is. And so I think if you're sitting there going, okay, well, we're going to pick up to 39 restaurants. We want 2 or 3 of this genre, 2 or 3 of that genre. How many Italian joints in America are better? You know, Bill, do you agree or do you have a different take on this?
So initially I had a different take, but I'm listening to your argument and it's a good point because I can't think of better Italian food. I guess what I prefer is steakhouses and French restaurants, and there are just so many good pickup Mexican places that I enjoy that I wasn't thinking about Italian in that rank of truly best. But the 39 best restaurants in the U.S. means essentially the single best restaurant in most states, but not all of them. Like, that is a super high bar. And some of the best places are things that restaurant reviewers are never going to do, like La Esperanza out on the west side of the town to your west, right?
Yeah.
Like that's phenomenal. There's no restaurant reviewer who's going there. And
you don't think the Michelin people are coming through to have some asado and fried eggs?
neither the Michelin people nor the health code people are going through there. But it is still delicious. So it is very, very good. I absolutely want to go back to Esther's Kitchen. Initially, I would have disagreed with your take, but you're right. That's just about as good as Italian food can be, and that's a pretty major cuisine.
I will point out that the last time that you and I were in Vegas together and had the first time we had Esther's, that was a trip where we ate at your beloved Le Cirque on the same trip. And what did we rave about on the podcast episode?
Yeah, no, that is a fair judgment. Also, I've long since paid off my meal at Esther's. Probably still paying for the meal at the Cirque.
Yeah, you probably got about 3 more months of installments left on that sucker.
Yeah.
Well, let's jump into our Vegas WTF story of the night. According to Las Vegas News 3 or News 3 Las Vegas Metro Police are battling a judge's order to release a suspect on bail pending trial. On the one hand, we fought a war with Great Britain 2.5 centuries ago about things like granted bail, and we should always respect judges' orders. On the other hand, this particular suspect has been arrested, no joke, 35 times and has a conviction already for involuntary manslaughter on their rap sheet and has a prior history of not meeting the terms of his bail on any of the 36 cases that he's been through in the past. So, Bill, what do we think? Should he get bail, or do the cops there in Vegas have a point?
So I'm torn. On the one hand, until you've been convicted, right, there should be an exceptionally high bar to keep you in jail. And once a judge has issued an order, a judge has issued an order. But on the other hand, man, 35 arrests is a lot. With a conviction where another person wound up being dead.
Yeah.
With not having, our police officers work real hard. And I don't know that they should have to work so hard to make sure this guy shows up for his next trial. This may be the exception that proves the rule. I'm pretty glad the police are appealing that particular order, because I don't know that this guy'd be a lot of fun to party with.
Yeah, I got to say, one of the things about growing up in West Texas, you sort of have 2 impulses. One is the strong back the blue impulse, and the other is the libertarian impulse that's like, follow the constitutional rules, dummy. I think my libertarian impulse is winning out. The judge issued a bail order. If the guy meets the bail conditions, let him out. If he breaks those conditions, lock him up. But I think I side with the judge on this one. But you know what? I'm not mad at the cops because it's close for me.
Yeah, so I guess for me, I try to be. One of the challenges we've got in this country is reading stories on the internet and assuming we know all the facts. And I don't know all the facts here. And there is a judge who did listen to all the facts and I didn't. Based on the parts that I think I know, which I admit to be incomplete, I struggle to think how bail is a reasonable choice here, because this is clearly not a dude who had a bad day. This is a dude who had 36 bad days that he was caught for, with at least one conviction where somebody wound up dead who didn't honor previous bail conditions. I wish, I would love to buy his or her honor a drink and ask the questions, hey, so how'd that dude get bail in the first place?
All I know is if Oscar Goodman was his lawyer, the cops wouldn't be fighting the bail. Bill, let's take this out of the political because we try not to get political on the podcast, which is hard because you and I are both very political people, but we don't want to lose listeners with our politics. So let's make this a Vegas thing. If I set the over under on the number of facial tattoos and neck tattoos this person has at 3, would you bet the under or the over?
Over.
Over. I think I take the push.
Huh. So I will be happy to take your money, but because I'm a good friend, I will use the money you just gave me to buy you a drink.
Oh, well, let's talk about some good places to drink and get into your trip report for your recent trip to Ireland. Now, for those of you who only listen for the drinks and the Vegas news, this is the part of the podcast where we're going to dip out of Vegas talk and get into other things. But we hope we're entertaining enough that you stick around for the ride. Bill, you had the opportunity to go to Ireland. You already have one son who's enrolled in college there in Dublin. And your other son will be enrolling in college in Cork this fall and was getting the lay of the land, so to speak. So you've made multiple trips there. Now, one of the questions I wanted to ask you, because you've talked about some Dublin pubs and other parts of Ireland before, but now that you've been enough times to get a sample size, and we talk on the podcast all the time about tourist restaurants and off-strip places like Esther's Kitchen that are more catering to locals. Let's talk about Dublin pubs. Would you compare and contrast the pubs that are clearly aimed at tourists visiting Dublin from elsewhere versus the pubs that locals in Ireland tend to congregate in?
So both of them are fun, and if you're going to go to Vegas, you should absolutely see both. And if the only pubs you can go to are the tourist pubs in central Dublin, God bless, have fun. They are absolutely authentic Vegas pubs because their pubs are rather
Vegas?
authentic. Yeah. You know what? I've had a couple of drinks. We're going to show some grace. They're absolutely authentic Irish pubs because they are pubs and they're in Ireland. I can't think of how much more authentic you get. They are fun. They are good experiences. And in a lot of cases, they're 200 years old, but they're crowded. They'll cost an extra €1 or €2 a drink. And they're where people go to have an experience. So our first couple, jet lag is worse going to Europe from the United States than coming back to the United States from Europe. So our first 2 nights in Dublin, we spent at a hotel north of central Dublin in Croke Park, or immediately across from the Croke Park Stadium. And we went to a couple of neighborhood pubs. And those were very different experiences. And one of them, it was an old bar where it was me, my 17-year-old Paul, and we went in, and it was the two of us and a lot of very old Irishmen who were watching like hurling or lacrosse or something. And like the bartender was glad to have us there because he knew we weren't going to mess it up. The other patrons weren't. And that was kind of a fun experience to see a place where actual locals gathered. There was also another nearby pub we went to that it was me, Paul, my older son, Edwin, my sister, and my wife. And we it was a neighborhood pub. And on the outside, it looked exactly like the tourist spots we've been to. On the inside, it looked exactly like the tourist spots we've been to. But the vibe was different. Like we found a little snug. A snug is essentially a little side area in an Irish pub where the 5 of us sat and talked for like 3 hours, had a couple drinks, eventually ordered some dinner, but we just sat like that became the family living room. And at some point when I ventured up to the bar to get another drink, there was an old married couple. And the way I know that they were married was they just had this look about them, which said they've been married to one another for 40 or 50 years. And she was on him about some stuff. Again, I'm trying so hard not to curse anymore on the podcast. She was on him about some stuff he had done wrong in, like, I'm guessing 1982.
Right.
There was a woman at a bar who was, I'm guessing this woman was 65 or 70 years old, but she had her pint, she had a book, she had a bowl of nuts. There were a couple of younger dudes sitting at a table arguing about sports. And it was such a delightful experience because it was clearly a place where the neighborhood gathered just to live their lives. Like it was 100% the neighborhood's living room. And I am so glad I got the chance to sit in that living room for a couple of evenings. And I like both of the experiences, and I would do either of the experiences in a heartbeat. I enjoy the neighborhood pubs, and I would encourage all of our listeners to get a little bit off the beaten tourist path and find some of those neighborhoods.
I think that's great advice for everywhere. I will say, when you talked about, you could tell that they were a married couple by the look of them. Did she carry that air of stifled contempt and he that surrendered resignation?
So I know that in my household, my wife celebrates everything I do because I am perfect in every possible regard. But it has been my observation that in other married couples, it is very much like what you've described. And yeah, that's pretty much what was going on.
Yeah, after years of marriage, in a previous career, I had the opportunity to engage in premarital counseling with couples that were looking to be wed. And one of the pieces of advice I gave them, it's always easier to get married than to stay married, but every day of a marriage starts with these words: "Oh, it's you again." You're going to wake up and you're going to roll over. And in your happy years, when things are going well, you roll over and you look at your beloved spouse and think, "Oh, it's you again." And then there are other seasons in your marriage where you roll over and you make eye contact and you think in your mind, "Oh, it's you again." But every morning is, "Oh, it's you again." So, Bill, you talked about the experience, because I've not had this experience yet, of walking into the watering hole with your son in order to do some father-son drinking. In America, that could be met with judgment. How do barkeeps on the Emerald Isle treat such activities?
So the drinking age in Ireland is 18.
I thought it was like 7. I thought if you just stumbled in, it's a tough day at preschool, give me a pint.
Theoretically, according to the law, in the couple of places where they might care. My older son, Edwin, is 20. My younger son, Thomas, is 17. They're only really 2 grades apart, but Edwin just had a birthday. So have you seen Steve Irwin on his animal shows talking about "that's such a good mom" when like the crocodile protects her young or something like that? Yeah. So I walked into bars with Edwin. I walked into bars with Paul, who theoretically couldn't legally drink in Ireland. I walked into bars with both of them. And in every single one of those places, and it was Paul, the 17-year-old, that I walked into the bar with the old Irishman who didn't want us in their bar. In every single one of those places, including the place with the old Irishman, the bartenders looked at me and gave me an up nod, which in my mind, I'm interpreting, and I don't think I'm wrong here, I'm interpreting as "that's such a good dad." Right? Like, yay, right. That dad is taking his boys to the pub. He's clearly teaching those young men how to live life. I loved every minute of that. Now, it was good that I got to sit and have a pint with my boys. And listeners, yeah, I took my 17-year-old to the pub. No, it probably wasn't the very best choice. But he's about to go to school in Cork, Ireland, where he's going to be of legal drinking age. I'm not letting that ish happen until I've given him some basic life lessons.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, you're going to turn him loose on essentially the Autobahn of alcohol. You might as well let him drive the family forward a couple of times.
Yeah, it was legitimately a teaching moment, but the bartenders loved the father-son dynamic. And they loved it when the whole family was there. And they loved it when I was there with my wife, or when I was there with my sister, or when I was there with random strangers, whatever. But every single bartender in Ireland loved it when I was there with one or both of my boys. And the look on their faces was very much of that's just a good dad there. I loved that experience, and it made my heart happy.
So I have a theory about the older Irish gentleman that didn't want you in their pub. Have you considered it's not that he doesn't want any foreigners in there, but you being an American of the country club class who clearly reeks of English descent, that he did not somehow instinctively hearken back to his IRA days of plotting against, I don't know, guys like you?
I don't. So I'm not going to give the names of my 4 great grandfathers
No,
here.
don't do that. Yeah.
But they're all English. Like every tourist tchotchke shop I went to would have like key rings or stickers with Irish family crest. None of my family names come up on any of them. I'm still like a member of the descendant church of the Church of England 491 years later. Yeah, I am what I am, and I reek of what I reek of. Sure, some of that might have been an issue, but the best story I can think of on that. So the Six Nations rugby match was going on. The penultimate weekend was our first weekend, and the final weekend was our last weekend. And between those 2 weekends, Ireland had a chance to win the Six Nations Cup, but they had to beat Scotland, which they did. And then England had to beat France. And we hired a car to take us from Galway to Cork and to make some stops along the way. And our driver said, and I won't try to recreate his accent because I don't want to get my butt kicked, but he said, yeah, I of course hope that our lads win, but if we beat Scotland and then we don't win the Six Nations because France beat the English, I guess that's okay. I just don't want the English to win. Like in 2026, right? Like the English have been gone for more than a century now. That dude was still like, I want us to win, but I want the English to lose more. And then I commented to that guy, you know what you would be? You would be a really excellent SEC football fan. You get my part of the
Yes. Yeah. I think that came over on the boats and manifested itself in college football. Yeah, I could definitely see that. It would be a conundrum for the Irishmen to have to root for England to beat anybody in order for Ireland to do better. I will say that in future episodes, I may refer to you instead of the leader in the luxury lounge as the limey in the luxury lounge.
I wore orange to work today just to make a point.
Oh my God. Yeah, you are that guy. Yeah. I wore green because I was in a room where about half of the people I was working with happened to be Catholic, and I felt like getting home today. All right, Bill, I think on that note, it's about time that we bring this episode in for a landing. Why don't you tell the listeners where they can find more Dine Drink Vegas, and given your recent travels, more importantly, Dine Drink travel content?
Folks, you can find us on YouTube at Dine Drink Vegas, where I bring you short and focused videos to help you plan your next trip to Las Vegas, something like 5 or 10 minutes on a particular hotel room or restaurant. But as John pointed out, you can also find us on YouTube at Dine Drink Travel, where over the next couple of months, I'll be dropping a lot of videos about my trip to Ireland, including places you might like to stay and places you might like to drink. You can also find me on essentially every social media platform at Dine Drink Travel. I particularly like to interact with John on X.
I'm at Dine Drink John. I am more than happy to talk to you about Las Vegas, about traveling through the great state of Texas, about barbecue, about fine coffee, fine cocktails, fine whiskey, and these seemingly fine decisions Jerry Jones is oddly making in NFL free agency. We thank you so much for taking the time to listen to our podcast. We know there's a ton of them out there, but you picked ours, and we're so glad. If you have a friend planning a trip to Vegas who needs our sage travel wisdom, please like, share, subscribe, share this podcast with them. If you have mortal enemies that hate listening to old, fat, white Southern guys drink and talk, share it with them too. Either way, you help us build an audience so we can keep bringing you this amazing premium and best of all free Las Vegas content. Once again, thank you so much for listening. Until the next episode, happy travels.
So,
I played
John,
the
do
Wild
you?
Rover the many a year. Sorry, I've
No,
had
it's
enough
fine.
whiskey to sing.
I love you, but I love whiskey more. So before I shut this off, I'm going to go buy or rather pour more whiskey. Can you sit tight for a second?
I can sit tight. I can't promise I won't sing into dead air, but I can sit
All right.
tight.
And listeners, if you're still listening at this point, thank you. We love leaving these Easter eggs at the end.